So a very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining this Lunch and Learn series, PPMA. And today I'm delighted that we have got colleagues from Veredus, one of PPMA's sponsors, and it's great that I can welcome Nick Cole and Mane Guron, who are going to be leading us through this afternoon's session. And Nick, how has life been for you during this period of lockdown? What have you learned about yourself that surprised you?
That's a really complicated question, Lee.
Yeah, of course it would be.
Expected nothing less from you. I think we are all learning to listen more to colleagues. I think people are more in tune with their emotions and with the sensitivities of working with colleagues and clients and candidates going through very different and difficult circumstances. I think there's a greater recognition of humanity and humility, people being kinder to each other and more understanding. So I think some of those it's been predominantly an emotional learning experience for me personally.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key reflections that all of our guests have shared, just in terms of that, connection. And some have, it's been quite tough as well for many of us, ups and downs. Yeah. But it's great anyway to have you here, and thank you for sharing that little vignette of your own world during lockdown. And I'm delighted to hand over to both and look forward to hearing what you've got to share with us. I'll be back just to say goodbye to everybody later in the show. So over to you, Nick.
Super, thanks Leatham, and good afternoon everybody. Thank you very much for having us today. For those who don't know me, my name's Nick Cole. I'm a director at Veredus in the permanent recruitment business, and I'm joined by my colleague Mane Guron, who is also a director in Veredus and has responsibility for our assessment and development team. For those that don't know us, a very brief introduction. We do 4 things: executive search, interim management, assessment and development, and talent insight, across 4 key public sector markets, namely central government, local government, education, and healthcare. We've put together 3 or 4 slides to share with you today that are the outputs of a piece of work that we've been conducting for about 3 months now. And by we, this is across all of Veredus, but we're also a division of Capita People Solutions. And a lot of this thinking has also come from being part of a PLC with 60,000 employees, as well as engaging with a number of key clients in developing some of the thinking. And what I'd start by saying is that there's a very clear recognition from our side that this is not the presentation of a solution. This is not a definitive answer to how organisations re-onboard, reform, restorm teams of returning furloughed workers. It's a series of ideas and concepts that we've put together with clients and colleagues to help articulate some thinking and a potential process, with a wraparound of some more kind of practical tools that could be used in your own organisations. But we're mindful that one size does not fit all, and that you represent organisations from different sectors, geographies, with different cultures, some very large, some very small. So we're really just using this opportunity to give you some content to ask the question of yourself around how might this work, and are we thinking about the right sorts of things before even questioning how you actually measure the kind of characteristics and motivations amongst people who are returning to roles in the coming weeks. And before I hand over to Mane, I just thought I'd share with you a little story from the Cole household today, actually, which is my wife returning to work today for the first time in 120 days. And it was really interesting talking to her last night about some of the real genuine kind of practical and emotional questions that she has about going back to work, not just from what will the office be like, but how will everybody get on. And she's in a really strange circumstance that she's in a job share where she switches over halfway through the week, and she sits alongside another team where they haven't been furloughed. So she's going to go into a dynamic today where she's going to have to relearn her role share, as well as how she refits back into the new normal that her business is starting to experience. So I just thought I'd give that. I'm sure everybody has had very similar experiences in their own homes and in their own networks. So I am going to try and share my screen, and bear with me because I'm a Teams boy rather than a Zoom boy, but hopefully this will work. And Manny can talk you through the 3 or 4 slides that we've put together for you.
Great. Thanks, Nick. And thanks, everyone. And thanks for the invite. It's a great opportunity to share our thoughts on reboarding. Of course, it's a very interesting topic with lots of stuff out there currently in terms of how to do it. Our take on this is probably more focused on how to reintegrate and how to do that successfully, both for individuals, teams, and also supporting managers through that process. Just briefly about me, I've been about over 10 years been heading up the assessment and development practice at Veredus. I've got 20 years experience of working as a psychologist, also clinically trained, but the last 15, 17 years focusing a lot around leadership development, leadership support in the occupational psychology field. So, I mean, the first thing to say, I guess, is what Nick also mentioned there, the challenging times that we've had the last 3-4 months, been very tough for organizations, very, very tough with workforces, staff, team leaders, managers, lots of change, uncertainty, and lots of concerns and stress also to manage for everyone. So that's perhaps the first thing to just kind of flag out there. And there are lots of areas to look at when you're considering the reboarding process. And what we've done is we've focused on a few of the ones that stick out for us, and just see how to try and measure or try and address and find ways to deal with those. And the first one is a key word here really is around resilience, and how to try and understand both the individual, the capability within the individuals on how to deal with uncertainty, how to manage stress, ambiguity, how to also look at potential risk areas in terms of how individuals can deal with that differently, and they may have different capability of doing so, or maybe be triggered by different things. So it's very much around trying to understand that both on an individual level and a team level. And then also the whole area around remote working, operate within in this new virtual work environment that we're all part of now. And again, it's about looking at the capabilities, and again, it can vary a lot from individuals. It might suit some individuals, it might cause stress, or might be more challenging for other individuals. Look at also how do you structure that kind of remote working to work effectively? How do you set in place routines, manage workload? How do you also lead virtual teams as a manager, which is again is a different approach, and also communicate, and how do you ensure engagement and inclusion? So there's a lot around the remote working stuff that needs to be looked at. And from my experience, I've talking to managers as part of coaching, is that actually managing remotely and working remotely in many ways can cause, this puts more demands on having very clear structure, clear routine, how you manage your time. Otherwise it can cause almost like a virtual stress in terms of that, because not everyone's out of the office or in the virtual office at the moment. So it's about how do you do that effectively and also look after yourself, both mentally and physically. And the third area is around the well-being aspect, and so how organizations can do this to the best of their capability in supporting individuals and teams, but also setting in place a proper support structure within the organizations to be able to help and people to manage this new situation. So that's the kind of the first slide, Nick. So you could probably change that to the next one. Yes, so you may have noticed, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with the old Tuckman team development model, forming, storming, norming, performing. So what we've done here, we've kind of almost played a bit with those terms, because it's a very, very good model to and very well-established model to use for look at how you take new teams and get them to kind of a good performing stage. And actually, if you look at the current situation, a lot of the teams, it's almost like you have to kind of rewind this process again and look at split up, broken teams, how you're going to get them back together in a new virtual work environment. So it's almost the kind of reversing, going back to square one a bit and try and reshape that the best you can. And bringing together the two big pieces here, of course, is one is the existing staff that's been continuing in their roles, continuing working, and then you have the furloughed staff who now looking to kind of get back into their roles again. So how do you do this? How do you present how do you do this successfully and kind of manage everything that comes with that? And because obviously with the furloughed staff, there are lots of things to explore there and really trying to understand in terms of obviously them feeling more disengaged or demotivated, lots of uncertainty, a lot of concerns about how am I going to get back and what's it going to look like when I get back, and how you're going to kind of reintegrate them back into the team, back into their roles as well. So that's, and some may have potentially left the organization during this process, or maybe be looking for other opportunities, so that they may have some clear concerns about what's it going to be like when I come back. Also looking at things like confidence, maybe taking a bit of a knock the last few months. So it's very much around understanding that whole dynamics on an individual level. And also it can also matter how much you've engaged with them during this furlough process. So even though they can't do any work, so obviously, but having some kind of contact also will probably be a measure of how successfully they'll be able to re-engage back into the organization again. And then you have the existing staff. Yes, Nick.
I was just going to jump in and say also that there's a consideration here for the people that have remained within the organization. There may be a sense that their workload has increased, for example, or their hours have increased as organizations have trimmed down, and those that have remained within the organization physically or virtually may feel that they've had more to do. So again, it's not just the mindset and the emotional well-being and the motivation of the returners, but also the world has changed for those that stayed with the organization for 3 months, and how you reform that collective type team that you hope you had before. It's all become the new, were you a leaver or a remainer? There is genuine risk in organizations that there will be perceived divisions between those that stayed and those that were furloughed.
Yes.
That leads on to the big question for people managers and for leaders. Yes,
no, absolutely, Nick. I completely agree there, because just like you say, there's often there might be other issues that are kind of the other end of the spectrum for the people who've been, for the existing staff, as you say, they may take on a broader remit, additional tasks, additional responsibilities, and then also maybe also with a pay cut. I mean, that's another thing to kind of bear in mind. They've had to do that, plus also go look at what their package in that sense, and also just the virtual working environment on top of that as well. So there's a whole kind of dynamics around both, and the challenge is to get both of them back in together into the same team again. And what we've done in this slide here is also looking at it, kind of just breaking it down individual level, team level, and leadership level. So at the individual level, it's very much looking at individual strengths, behaviors, areas of impact, areas of support. Team level also is about what are the strengths within the team, and how can you kind of, what support do they need? How can we really promote engagement, inclusion? What's the new dynamic as well? So it's about how can that dynamic be addressed and worked with properly? So that you could almost say that we mentioned the Tuckman model there. So the storming and norming phase are actually in those bullet points on this page in that sense, because the revisiting this and kind of looking at both individual capability, team capability, and also the leadership capability in managing performance in these new teams, it will be a challenge, but it will need to be addressed, and hopefully that will lead to the next stage. Next, if you change slide there. Yeah, so there again, you probably noticed we played a bit with the term here. So going through that whole process, when the team has been reformed, you're looking to maximize the engagement and the inclusion. You're looking to also really look at the well-being aspects, the support systems in place, capabilities around resilience, and then also the productivity. Looking at all those aspects there can then lead to a productive, positive outcome in terms of re-performing. So that's the whole idea around, and that's why I guess we use the term re-performing, is because if you go through the previous stages, you can then get to this stage where you had a performing team before, and if you do all the kind of the re-stages previously now that we talked about, you can get to the re-performing, but in a new environment, in a changed environment. That's the whole idea. Obviously, the team's not going to look the same now the way it used to be.
And I think, Manny, you and I talked about, again, the risk of not doing this properly, that the arrows in this model could almost flip and point outwards and lead to what we described as disintegration of a team. But actually, if elements are not well managed, there is a major risk of disengagement, unhappy people who feel less resilient than when they came back to the organization, and far less productive. So it's almost a continual sense checking, isn't it, of the re-performing process to make sure that everybody is still on side and doesn't stray away from the reformed direction of the team. And again, that's something for people managers and leaders to think about. It's an ongoing process.
Yes, and it's about making that very clear connection about the well-performing, high-performing teams that know what they're doing. They know how to work well together. They've set down the kind of the norms and the expectations and the purpose of the team in terms of what to deliver. They also will deliver good business outcomes, and the better the business outcomes you deliver, of course, then it will also have good effects in terms of the whole business side of revenue, etc. I mean, and that's what you need. If you don't have that, then it can cause problems all across the organization. Yeah, we can do the next one there, Nick. Yeah, so what can you do then to support, to enable get to that re-performing stage? And again, you kind of broken it down into individual level, team level, and then looking at the leadership. And at the individual level, there's a lot of things you can do in terms of really kind of assessing or getting measure of the individual team members, both existing and people coming back, their key strengths, their areas for support, which may have changed. Again, so this is about getting a snapshot now, compared with 3-4 months ago, that it's likely that things will have changed around their motivation potentially and their resilience. It could also be how they would like to work. concerns about the new way of working. So there are lots of things there to explore around just doing kind of almost kind of a profiling and proper feedback sessions with a real development focus to try and understand the issues and what can you do to support the individuals the best possible way. And then there are other things you can do also internally in the organizations around mentoring and peer support. And Nick and I, we talked about this before, that it's things that everyone knows about and knows about how, you know, the positive effects and the positive impact it has, but it's about putting it in place properly. It's about really implementing procedures where you have support group, peer support, where people can support each other and learn from each other. And that also goes with the leadership, at the leadership level. From my experience, organizations who put in place proper internal peer support amongst the leaders, where they can learn from each other and they can share their challenges. It's a really good support system and also cost effective in terms of investing time in that internally. But you need to put it in place. That's the thing I think is, and also with the team level, it's about almost getting a team profile around key areas of strength, and also where are the gaps in the team, where are the risks in the team moving forward. And that can be done also through workshops and team sessions, and also to kind of really get a hang of that. And on the left there, we just got a number of different tools that we use. We're agnostic, which means that we can pick and choose any tools we find most relevant or suitable for a particular piece of activity. So, but there are some really good ones there. Farabi, you may know, it looks at also individual needs around inclusion, which I think in this particular time and place is hugely important. There might be some individuals who have a very strong need for being included, and that needs to be addressed. And if you know that, you can also support those individuals differently. And then there are other people who are quite self-sufficient and maybe who will take the transition very easily. You know, it might not be quite, they will kind of just slot into work, and they kind of are self-sufficient and self-motivated. And then you have the Hogan battery, looking at resilience and motivation. Another one to mention there is the GC index, which particularly looks at the maximizing individuals' impact. And I think that's, again, is a key topic when you've been out of the loop for a few months, you're coming in, and it's almost like an opportunity to re-impact again, you know, within the organization. How can I do that to the best of my ability? And where are my strengths? And how can I maximize that in terms of, you know, driving engagement? So lots of things you can do there to get a measure of both resilience, motivation, and individual styles. Yes, and yeah, just some food for thought again. And it's just to kind of to recap there, you have, so if you can really get a hold of the individual and the team characteristics and put in place those support systems, then you have, it can lead to many benefits around engagement, inclusion, the well-being, resilience, obviously, productivity, and also can re-engagement also means that there's less risk of kind of burnout or that you feel disengaged. Yeah, so that's just the recap around those things. And I guess we just had a few topics there around discussion to maybe hand over to you guys as well around the preparations that you've done for reboarding, your thoughts on new ways of working, key challenges, both as a leader or manager, but also the support systems you've put in place within your organizations. So I think interesting to reflect on those. Nick, do you want to add something?
I think the only final point that I would add, given many people on this webinar will be from the public sector, is also to think about redeployments. So particularly in local government and healthcare, where people maybe haven't been physically furloughed, they may have been redeployed into different roles. So there's almost some thinking around counting them as returners, or conversely, are there things that they are now better suited to? So I think there's a whole piece of reflection there as well about returning redeployers as well as returning re-furloughed workers.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop the share now.
Yeah.
Nick and Manny, that was a really excellent session. I've got one question that's come in, and that's to do with what do you think is the one top tip that you'd be able to give to people who are bringing back colleagues who have been furloughed? What is the best area to focus on, do you think, to get the biggest impact for them?
I think, Lethan, for me, it's really where we started the conversation. I think it's listening. I think it's understanding individual need. And I think it's showing a huge amount of humanity and humility to understand that that individual may have had a very difficult period with a lot of both mental and well-being concerns and issues, impacts on home life and finances, and uncertainty, and just being just good people, which is what we all are, and what PPMA is. People just being mindful that we're dealing with humans and colleagues. That would be my view.
Yeah, and great advice too. It kind of connects with an initiative PPMA launched a couple of weeks ago called Care Space, and it's a technique, an online technique for enabling people really just to be able to share and talk about how they're feeling. You know, an opportunity to be listened to without kind of that transactional debate. So if anyone out there wants to know more about that opportunity, then please do get in touch with us. Sadly, today our time has just about to run short, and the slides that Nick and Mane have shared will be available on PPMA website. Any questions that you do have, put them through to us and we'll be able to get in touch with Nick and Mane directly. And also we'll have their contact details available for you on the PPMA website as well. So a huge thanks to both of you for sharing. It's great to listen to your insights and knowledge. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having us.
You're very, very welcome. And I hope
thank you very much
back in the not too distant future, the few more sound bites that we can listen to as we enjoy our little lunch, the whole benefit of lunch and learning, you see. Thanks to everybody for tuning in today. Just a few headlines for you. We've got an action-packed July full of really delicious insights coming up. So we kick off July with a webinar from Penna in terms of their insights, in terms of the world of recruitment. On Monday, we're joined by the editor, Rob Moss of Personnel Today. He'll be in conversation with Karen Grave, our president. I should have said also on the 1st of July, at our morning mindfulness broadcast, 7:45, we're going to be joined by Nuthan, who will be doing a live broadcast from India. She's going to be sharing with us her knowledge and insights into Ayurvedic mindful practice. It's a great opportunity to find out some interesting stuff there. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be having a session with Oracle and KPMG, who are going to be sharing their insights around segmenting the workforce and different approaches that we need to be thinking about in our preparation for this new future world. So that just gives you a flavor of what we've got in store for you in July. There'll be at least 2 broadcasts per week for the rest of July. Bookings are now open also for the virtual conference. Anyone who bought a ticket for the actual physical event, that will be free of charge. And but for the rest, if you want to buy a ticket, we're taking bookings now. And that will also include the announcement of all of our 2020 award winners. So we've got lots to look forward to throughout July, August, September, the conference. And thank you so much to colleagues from Veredus, and I wish you all well out there in the world of HR, whatever you're up to. Take care, sending love and friendship to every one of you, and hopefully see you at our next broadcast. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thanks.